We are into the next session for today, and we have the next speaker, respected Madam Shalini Goyal. Bhalla. She has already joined. I could see that, and she is with us today. Let me welcome her. You're most welcome to this session, ma'am. Manish sir, please. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Irfan. Thank you for inviting me to this session. And I was listening to the previous speaker, which was very enlightening session indeed.
Thank you so much for joining, ma'am. And it's indeed pride and proud privilege for all of us that you spared your valuable time for this session, and we all are going to benefit from this session. I'll take 2 minutes to give a brief introduction about the speaker. She is basically an environmentalist, something which we talk daily about, climate change visionary. She has been actively working in sustainability, especially the concept of zero waste programs, which she introduced and has helped a lot of schools and created consciousness about carbon footprints, how we can simply understand the project zero, and that has been making headlines everywhere, especially since she was awarded also. She is currently chairing the International Council for Circular Economy, and the only book that's available in India on circular economy. She is the author of the book. She's working with Niti Aayog on formulating policies in circular economy for India's first certified course in circular economy. She has been a part of several FDPs and executive training programs at IIMs, IITs. She's associated with MSME and the Delhi government on their entrepreneurship mindset programs. Social founder, London Global Goodwill Ambassador, the US Women Entrepreneur Award by ICCE, Women in Leadership Award by Pathbreakers. And these are very few awards and recognitions that she has been getting. We are indeed very happy and glad that we have such a visionary with us today. She'll be sharing her thoughts. And just before you start, ma'am, I must give a context that the participants here are faculty members of engineering college across India, and we are very happy that we have practically participation pan-India. We have people from down south to east to west and from north in central India. So it's a beautiful audience, and we all want to understand what exactly circular economy is, because for that subject we are laymen. So I request you to be as easy as it can be, so that we can understand it very well, because it has been going through our daily routine. We have been hearing about it, and what little we could understand it isn't enough to form a perspective about it. And we are happy and we are delighted that we have the best person to make us understand with us. It's all over to you, Madam Shalini Goyal.
Thank you, Dr. Irfan. Thank you very much for inviting me to this training program. And I'm glad that there are faculty from Pan India who are listening to it. I'm sure a lot of work is going on circularity. I could see a number of professors interested in doing some kind of research also related to this subject. I would not say that we are totally unknown. The subject is unknown. I'm sure a lot of you must be working on this already. But yes, the only mandate of the council when we established it last year was to be a thought leader in this domain. And when we say thought leader, we understood that India needed a kind of direct influence, be it related to academics, policy making, or maybe the research area, and also projecting India as one of the knowledge sharer. So I was actually working on, I'll give a very small brief apart from whatever Dr. Irfan has said. Thank you so much, Dr. Irfan, once again for that. But how my stint at circular economy started was around 3 years back, when I started working on a project which was a New York based project. And I was working with the client, and the client was actually the New York Corporation itself. So we were actually developing something for New York Corporation on zero waste management. And then after that, I was working on a couple of projects in European Union as well. And when I started working there, I realized that European Union is taking a stride in circular economy, whereas if you read about India, there are a lot of practices already happening. So I would say my thought process started from there, that India needs to be in the center of the knowledge exchange and not just be a kind of a follower of European Union, the way it is mostly projected by the world economies. But my idea was to include India into mainstream thinking process. And that is where we started looking at this council. This council was formed last year. We have recently finished our 1 year of operations, and our annual report has come. And we are very happy that the annual report and the work we have done in last 1 year has been really, really commendable. And not by us, actually. When other people appreciate the work, that is the time you realize that you have been able to make a very small but significant effect. But at the same time, I think this is just the beginning, and we have a lot to do in the coming years. Having said that, I would also want to tell you that I'll keep my presentation on the introduction of circularity, and also a bit of, then we deviate from the basics of circular economy to how circularity could be brought in the plastic industry. Basically, the challenges and the opportunities that circular economy brings to the plastic industry. Let me just share my presentation with you. Dr. Irfan, I hope you can see the presentation.
Yes, ma'am, we are able to see.
Is this in full screen?
No, not yet. Now it is.
Okay, thank you. So before we actually begin, let me put things into the context first. We all know that the world economies are divided into different sets when it compares to the GDP, and what we understand is that the developing economies have very high GDP per capita, whereas the emerging economies have very, very low GDP per capita. And while we say that, we understand that there is a whole push and need of developing the emerging economies and poorer economies to not just build up their economic viabilities, but also the giving provisions to the individuals, and the basic human rights even are something that needs to be developed. So you can see there are a set of economies which are actually right now even below the world average, and then there are economies who are much above the world average. And then when we start discussing about the circularity, we actually kind of correlate it to the resource consumption. And what we understand is that the circular economy, in a developing economy, the resource consumption is lesser as compared to a developed economy. So if you put it on the graph, you will see that on the bottom left, there are economies which are emerging and poor economies, and the resource consumption in these economies is very less. But as we move up, we see that the developed economies like US, Qatar, Australia, UAE has very high consumption rates. And this purely shows a correlation between the resource consumption and the GDP per capita. More the GDP, more the resource consumption, and also more the waste. And that is a kind of a direct linkage that has been seen. Now, when we talk about population, again, we realize that the population, the population growth rate is declining now, whereas the absolute number of people or population of the world is going to increase. So it is estimated that by 2100, we will have around 10.9 billion people. And if we have such a huge number, we can understand that the resource consumption is going to increase definitely as the economies are trying to push, or the work is being done towards improving the conditions, the economic, socioeconomic conditions of the emerging economies. The net result of the growth, while we say that the GDP should increase, the net result also will be the increase in the global resource use. And that is what this graph shows, that as the GDP is going to increase, similar trends can be seen, and there will be massive increase in the global resource consumption. So that is one big disadvantage at the moment. While the GDP increase brings good news to every single economy, but why this is bad news is because the resources are finite. The earth holds a finite capacity to regenerate its resources, whereas the consumption is so fast that we are actually consuming 1.7 earth every year. That is the kind of rate we are consuming the resources currently, and this is only going to increase with time. So if that is the case, we are not actually giving the ecology enough time to regenerate itself, and that has led to crossing the planetary boundaries. We know that we have crossed multiple planetary boundaries. The climate change, frequent droughts, floods, completely disrupted cycles, forest fires are something that is a kind of situation which we have come to because of the climate change patterns and the effect of human activity. For this, there are two kind of theories that are prevailing. One is called the resource efficiency, which basically means that we should utilize the resource to as much extent as possible. The other philosophy is the circularity. So in a circular economy, what we discuss is, I'm sure you must have gone through this diagram, which was put forward by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. In this diagram, we can see that all the resources are actually, the natural resources are put into the biological cycles, and the man-made materials are put into the technical cycles. And all these resources, while they have been manufactured through the natural processes or the man-made processes, where the consumer is either a consumer or user of those things. So according to them, a consumer is someone who consumes the item, and user, we at the same time are consumer as well as user. We use the technical products, whereas we consume the biological products. And then while we differentiate all the products, all the resources into two broad spectrums, we also say that these resources are brought in back into circulation through some kind of circles. Now, when we talk about these loops, these are called loops in circularity. The blue loops on the right-hand side are all for the technical products. And we see that more closer the loop to the user, it has more value proposition. So if you can see, maintenance has a better value proposition than reusing and redistributing. So the more we can maintain the things, more we can kind of repair the things and reuse them. It has better value proposition than redistribution. Similarly, redistribution and reuse has a better value proposition in circularity than refurbishing and remanufacturing. and refurbishing and remanufacturing has better value proposition than the recycling. So the most common kind of challenge that we face, or anyone who's talking about circularity faces, when most of the people come and say that circular economy is recycling. If you recycle the products, then you are becoming circular. From this diagram, I'm sure you all would have seen that recycle is a part of circular economy, but it is the least value proposition when it comes to circularity. A major focus of all economies, I'm not talking only about India, but I'm talking about the global economies, lies on recycling of the products. Whereas we believe that the focus should shift from recycling to the kind of business models which are more related to maintenance of the products, durability of the products, products that work on, or the models that work on increasing the life span of the product should be more preferred. Then working on several other designs for circularity is something that we will be talking about in this presentation at the later stages, are more have more value proposition than the latter part of the loops. Similarly, on the left hand side, if you see, we are talking about bringing in the biological materials into several cascades and bringing them back into the loop once again through different processes. Once again, if you see biogas, though it's again a part of it, but again it is preferred lesser to the extraction of the biochemical feedstock and anaerobic digestion or composting processes. So the value proposition has to be understood very clearly in a circularity when we talk about. And the another aspect you can see is the least is going to minimum should go for the energy recovery, and the least should go to the landfill. Another very important thing here in this diagram to predict from here or infer from this diagram is to see that energy recovery is not a very good proposition. What we are saying is that energy recovery should only be an option when we have no other option left. But currently, if you see many economies, including Singapore, who have actually been using incineration for most of the waste that they produce, is not something that circularity actually appreciate. So the other processes are to be given more weightage when it comes to circularity. I'm sure a lot of you would have again gone through these diagrams. The linear model, which is take, make, and waste model. So we are actually taking, extracting, producing, and wasting, and all that waste enters into the landfills, and landfill sites in our cities are the best example of it. So we can see that the pile is increasing with every passing day, and it is so difficult to manage these landfill sites. We have examples from the Ghaziabad landfill site in Delhi, which has seen all kind of catastrophe, not only the air pollution that it is causing, but the land and water pollution as well, which is associated with it. Along with it, this process of linear economy brings a lot of pollution because we are looking at massive energy usage, and energy usage is only going to increase with the economies performing better. Also with the kind of, let's say, the program initiated by the Indian government, where we are talking about the rural electrification and 100% electrification of the villages. Again, the energy consumption is going to increase, and this energy consumption is right now based largely on the thermal power station, though India has taken very ambitious measures to convert to the use of renewable energy, which is commendable. And but because our energy production right now is largely coming from the coal sector, the thermal power plants, the kind of pollution that is being created is also huge. On the other hand, if you see the circularity, we are talking about the make, use, and recycle kind of a model, where we are saying that anything that is extracted should be again put into the cycle again to kind of reuse the raw materials as long as possible. So primary material usage of less virgin stock, more secondary material inclusion in the production cycles, and more business models that could lead to increasing the lifespan of the products is something that we are talking about in a circular economy. Similarly, you could see that the energy production largely comes from renewable sources of energy, so that the environmental impact of energy production is reduced. Another very important study, an interesting study that came out was about the food sector, the mobility sector, and the energy sector, which are the three most polluting sectors. And if we are able to concentrate on these sectors and kind of start converting them into circular models, then I think, according to one of the study, it will not only reduce the pollution that is associated with these three sectors, but also help to bring in circularity and create circular jobs at the same time. Since we are focusing on the plastic, I'm sure you all must have gone through these numbers multiple times, but we will just kind of very quickly reiterate them. This is from CPCB report of 2018-19, and we understand the plastics have become one of the most important discussion area across globe, not just India. And that is because the consumption and most of the waste that we see constitutes of plastic. Whereas if we go by numbers, we will see that out of 55 to 65 million metric tons of waste that was the municipal solid waste produced in India, only 3.36 million metric tons was the plastic waste. That means it constitutes only 5 to 6% of the total solid waste in the country. The per capita generation in India is highest in Goa, which is the richest state, and it has 60 grams. And the lowest and national average comes to only 8 grams per capita per day. Delhi consumes around 37 grams per capita per day. And that shows the kind of deviation from minimum to maximum. And there is a huge range that needs to be taken care of. So another thing that is to be noted here is that one shoe doesn't fit all kind of places. And with a country as diverse and as wide as India, similar policies cannot be implemented at every level. Rural areas have seen to be generated lesser plastic, whereas the tourist spots have been actually generating huge plastic waste. So the policies and the trends are different, and so should be the legislation in different cities. So while we talk about it, we should also know who are the stakeholders in the plastic waste management. Most of the times we look at the producer, but not just the producers, the brand owners and importers of the plastic item are the one who are in the game, but there are local bodies who are responsible for the operational infrastructure, the collection and segregation and storage of the plastic waste. But at the same time, there are all those individual as well as the institutional waste generators who generate waste, including us, because we are also the consumers. So all of us are the stakeholders in this game, and every single person should be made responsible for managing the plastic waste. As far as the PI boards is concerned, there was a policy, the EPR, which came in 2016 related to the plastic waste management. And this is a very intelligent step. We have seen a lot of private public partnerships developing. Then a lot of big manufacturers have already adopted EPR and are managing the disposal of the plastic waste. A lot of companies have come forward with their corporate social responsibility as well, and they are once again managing the plastic waste, including the marine plastic, through several measures. This is a very good policy, but at the same time, the implementation has to be stringent, and we must make sure that the disposal of the plastic waste that is being generated is being taken care of properly. But does it bring circularity? I think this is a very important question that a lot of people keep asking me, and we shall discuss that at a slightly later stage of my presentation. Uh, when we talk about circularity and how could the plastic industry become circular, I think one point that is very important is rethinking of business models. We need to kind of look at the current business model versus the business models that could be circular in nature. So in emerging economies, the application of reverse logistics is still in the preliminary stage. Even in India, because the volumes that are generated are huge, there is lack of awareness among people, and there is hardly any segregation happening at the source. Very few cities in India have actually recorded a good percentage of segregation, but most of the time we don't have good segregation, and that is a major problem that the supply chain management has, because the waste, if it is unsegregated, has lesser value proposition. So all stakeholders are the players and will be very helpful in developing the reverse supply chain, and that is the responsibility as well. In developing countries, the manufacturers should seriously consider the application of reverse logistics, and this would make a remarkable change in the whole scenario of plastic waste management. Also, the concept of EPR will force the PI boards to, or is forcing when it comes to India, in kind of developing a circular supply chain. So these, with the change in the business models, the stakeholders will be brought into a kind of a loop where they are responsible for the kind of waste that is being generated. You all must also be aware of phasing out single-use plastic as per the latest directive of the Plastic Waste Management Amendment Rules 2021. So that is also another very important step that has been taken, and I think we need to be very clear about that as well. So MSME, which constitutes a major portion of our manufacturing, has to be taken into account and have to be educated about these new amendments. Elimination of problematic plastic packaging. We all understand that packaging is a very, very important constituent of plastic waste. And when we think of this, we need to rethink about the way we are interacting with this packaging. There are different materials that are available, and they are also being added to the waste. And it is very difficult to differentiate, to segregate this waste, and ultimately it ends up into the environment, either a water body or the landfill sites. A staggering 8 million tons leak into ocean every year, and that number is increasing with the increase in usage. So we need to think of it now. As we know, one of the studies said that by 2050, the plastic in oceans is going to will be more than the weight of the fish, number of fish. So I think that is very, very important observation, and that is what is important, is highlighting the importance of plastic packaging as well, and also its waste management. So this is a diagram you can see from Ellen MacArthur Foundation. They talk about the plastic packaging material flow in a linear economy. And what they are saying is how the virgin material is entering, and this virgin material, which is around 78 million tons, is the annual production, and most of it, a major part of it, is either being added to landfills or it leaks into the oceans. A few part of it, which is 14%, is used in incineration or energy recovery. And so this is the kind of bifurcation of the plastic waste which is happening currently, the management of plastic waste rather. So we can see still most of it is added to landfills or in the marine industry. So what is the circular alternate to this? So the use of plastic, if we look at these numbers, has increased 20-fold in last 50 years. While the material has many benefits, we know it is called wonder polymer. it has it has attached negative consequences, especially after their use. There are specific documentaries like the Blue Planet 2, which shows the impact of plastic pollution on wildlife around the world. And they have shocked and spurred a backlash also. In 2016, Ellen MacArthur Foundation published a report which showed that most plastic packaging is only used once, and only 14% is collected for recycling. Almost 95% of the value of packaging material, which is worth 80 to $120 billion, is lost to the economy. So we are actually talking about huge uh, value which is being actually disposed of after a single use. In another report, which was published in 2017, they showed that without fundamental redesign and innovation, about 30% of the plastic packaging will never be reused or recycled. Now that shows the opportunity as well as challenge for the industry, where how this 30% of plastic packaging, which is never reused or recycled, could be brought back into circulation. Now, when we talk about this, we are talking about developing new business models or innovating new products so that uh, the uh, the dependence on the virgin material reduces, whereas the extracted material which is there could be put to the best value proposition and could be put into a circular loop based utilization and does not goes to the landfills ever. So that is the kind of approach we should think with. Now, this is a kind of circular scenario where the virgin materials, once they are extracted, they enter into a loop through design production processes, reuse or recycling processes, and there is hardly any wastage into the landfill and nothing into the marine ecology as well. So this is the ultimate objective of a circular economy, where everything goes into reuse or recycling, and a very less amount goes for anaerobic digestion if required, but that's the least value proposition, as we said earlier. So now that we understood that innovation and design plays a very, very important role, what are the possibilities? So we are looking at plastics, which is still being produced at a very rapid rate. We need to find a way to either give it another life, or to break it down into less harmful products. And that is why you must have studied about bioplastics are being talked about, where they are, the claim is that they will completely kind of break into harmless materials, but I think the studies are still going on about the probability of the waste that is being produced or microplastic that are being produced after the bioplastics break down. In 2012, a group of research students from Yale University discovered a species of mushroom from Amazon forest that is capable of digesting plastic, and these are what are used to break down the plastic into organic material. Following this discovery, there were several tests and other species of mushroom to see if similar process could take place. And to the amazement of the researchers, including oyster mushrooms, which are commonly consumed across the world, could be used for this process. Further studies are currently taking place to see if these mushrooms can be safely eaten once they have digested the plastic, which would make a full circular economy model, because there is no wastage, then even the mushrooms could be used again for eating purposes. Although it may be tricky to convince people to eat mushroom that have that have come from a landfill site. But even if we choose not to eat them, there is a great way of letting nature speed up the decomposition process of plastics, which would otherwise take hundreds of years. Also, there are many other designs which are coming up to reduce the packaging waste, as well as the plastic waste should be reduced, or more innovation is required in this area. Then we talk about biodegradable plastics. This is, I think, one of the most debatable topic today when it comes to bringing circularity in the plastic sector. It has been on a discussion. There are thousands of applications of plastic where their properties of never degrading is simply not required. So plastic is used for a few days or weeks and then thrown to landfill. That is what we all are experiencing every day. This has led many companies to create biodegradable plastic as an alternative. Plastics that would break down and not be left in the environment for hundreds of years could be replaced by plastic which has, or maybe the material which has different properties but could be suitable for their usage particularly. One of my favorite example is that of a company called Mobius. They have created biodegradable plastic to replace plastic mulch film, a commonly used plastic in horticulture used to cover crops over huge areas to prevent damage. The best thing about this is that they are utilizing an existing waste stream to make the plastic, creating a circular economy solution. So you can see very small kind of innovations are leading to reduce the plastic waste or eliminate the plastic waste from the entire linear cycle. So the idea is to come up with solutions that would reduce this plastic waste and ultimately pull back that waste into circulation. Then there are several technologies that we are talking about. 3D printing, you know, is growing, and this is one technology which even India is working largely on. Even I was actually interacting with some school students. The ATLs, the Atal Tinkering Labs, have come up with 3D printers, and students are actually utilizing and have wonderful ideas of using and making some products out of it. It allows to download the plan, and they are actually making some 3D plastic right in front of them. So that is something that even today's school students are doing. A group of students from UC Berkeley have managed to find a way to use single-use plastic material, melt them, and use them into useful items, and just avoiding them to reach the landfill. This was taken to another level by New Raw Association. Use the same process on a large-scale 3D print sheet furniture out of waste plastic. It takes 100 kgs of plastic waste to create just one of the street benches. So you can imagine the kind of waste that could be pulled out to make something useful. But then we are talking about finding a solution to this waste stream. The more plastic it takes, the better. So another thing, I think, while this 3D technology plays an extremely important role, we can pull out, you can see for one street bench, if 100 kgs of plastic waste is used. Today, I know in India, there are industries, there are companies who have this technology already, and are even ICCE is collaborating with ULBs to replace their plastic waste for anything useful that could be given back, maybe in terms of benches or tiles, etc., that could be made out of it, or maybe even dustbins that the ULBs could install, are all a very good solution. But I think in circularity, another very important aspect is to look at the solution where the dependence on the virgin material is also reduced. So if there is a solution we can find which will reduce the use of virgin plastic, is something that will be that will have higher value proposition than any other alternate. So we know that across world, the plastic waste is used as a fuel. Most of the times, even there are some startups in Australia who have found a way to break polystyrene and make biofuels out of it. This fuel could be used for multiple purposes. This solution, however, according to the circular economy principles, seems to be temporary, as burning this fuel is very dangerous. It eliminates a lot of greenhouse gases, and again will not make any change to the climate change that we are talking about. So although while it solves the plastic waste issue, I think it creates another problem simultaneously. So maybe the solutions which is related to the temporary use or burning of this of the plastic waste and use as a fuel is not something which is sustainable in long term. Okay. Then another very important thing that comes to our mind while we start developing these circular business models is about tracking the waste and tracing the waste. In a country like India, where waste is actually hardly tracked, or kind of there is hardly any data available, no one knows where the waste is being dumped. A lot of time and a lot of reports and news articles have come which shows that the plastic waste that was generated in Delhi was dumped somewhere in the Aravallis. Similarly, if you go to Uttarakhand, you will find out again a lot of plastic waste is either burned or it is simply dumped down the valley. Uh, Areas which are close to the coastal the coast are lies in the coastal areas have been actually noticed to throw away their waste in the water streams. Now these points bring an important observation that the plastic waste need to be tracked properly. There are different ways of tracking it. There is different technology that is available, but tracing the waste from its generation to its discard is very, very important, and digital transformation can play an important role in this. We know there have been some initiatives already. There are mobile apps. There are some NGOs, a lot of NGOs rather, who are working in this domain. But at the same time, having a centralized or maybe even decentralized system at the state level, if not the central level, is something that will be beneficial in tracing the entire waste. Uh, that is one of the most important concern for a country like India. Again, there are a lot of examples in the Internet of Things where the waste collection processes and recycling activities of that plastic could be traced and could be used to manage the waste today. We need to understand that one is a hardware and then is a software, and these waste collectors need to kind of collect the waste, hold the data, and maintain that for a proper in their systems, so that everything is planned and optimized, and all the resources are put for a better solution, or maybe suggestive solution to the link data that is being generated through these different innovative products. Then we come to digitization, which is another very big opportunity when it comes to startups. And this is one big area where a lot of opportunities are there related to the way the entire value chain could be actually made transparent and also made accountable at the same time. The sizes, as you know, are shrinking. The complexity, the material complexity of the packages is changing, and the functional composite packaging are few important factors that needs to be taken care of while we are talking about digitization. So all these different aspects make the entire waste management of plastic industry quite complicated. The online and mobile based tools, there are a few you would know, are the main players. They should actually trace the flow of material and create digital marketplaces. These solutions create high level transparency in the supply chain, which is important requirement for the global brands that want to increase their use of socially responsible recycled practices in plastic in their manufacturing processes. It is most common for organizations to use mobile app. As you would know, we have seen several mobile apps which are either working through WhatsApp or they are separate individual apps which are using and working on collection of the waste. I know of one particular scenario. I will quote that example to you here today. We were actually working with a particular society in Gurgaon. And while we were working with them, the major problem was that people would not segregate, and how digitization played an extremely important role to kind of start that was when we came up with an app. And with that app, we told people that we will give you bags to keep your uh, dry waste separate, and we will collect the dry waste every week. So one day was fixed with the RWA, and we would collect the waste on that particular day. And we said that every single waste item that you will collect will have some associated value, which was again mentioned in the app. And that money would be actually kind of put into your in your app, and you can use that money to buy products either on Amazon, or you could actually put it back into your Paytm. So there were two connections back to back. Just that little thing was played such an important role that people started collecting and keeping their dry waste separate. Every week they would look forward to our van going and collecting this dry waste, and once we collected, they would wait for the update in the mobile app as to how much paper, how much cardboard, how much plastic, how much Tetra Packs have we actually thrown. And once it was updated, they would look forward to the associated, even if it was very minute cost, but they will look forward to that kind of data. And then they could actually, someone used to kind of recharge their mobile phone, someone use them as a kind of a discount coupon on Amazon, and so on and so forth. So these are the kind of digitization practices that have helped to manage the plastic waste. And that is how the entire society, almost every single home in that society is today segregating. So that's the importance of digitization. It not only kind of shows you some kind of leverage of that system to allow people, or maybe give people an option to segregate their waste. So while we talk about all this, even this example shows a correlation between the digital technology, the adoption of digital technology, and the mobile-based solution that we see. All three can be woven together, and technology today with the kind of data rates. Every single person has mobile. We see even our staff today has got the working staff, maids in our houses. Everyone has got mobile phones which could be used, and all of them are now aware of technology. And something as simple as WhatsApp, which everyone is using today, could be used for tracking and managing this plastic waste. So this is an important kind of, we are standing at a point which is quite important and quite interesting as well, and we should use this correlation between different things to improve the waste management in plastic industry particularly. Another thing is the blockchain, which is an emerging technology, and a lot of work is being done today on blockchain. It can make easier the transportation of waste from end to another. There can be QR codes on the trash bags and smart contract for each move, where shipment of waste can be neatly organized. Even regulatory compliances can be made straight with blockchain technology. Information straight will make sure that the project get executed wisely on time, and the blockchain can make sure that the most appropriate means of waste disposal is adopted and effectively carried. So this is another area which can be developed. Coming back to designing of these cycles, I would say that design for circularity is one of the most important thing. And when we are talking to students or we are talking to entrepreneurs, one very important thing that I keep telling them is about designing for circularity embedded right from the beginning. And what does it say? The basic meaning of designing for circularity is that right from the beginning of developing the business model, we will plan in such a way that we keep out waste. There is no waste generation in the system, as well as there is no wastage and pollution, in the system. If we design a model with those considerations right from the beginning, then I think we are following the principles of circularity uh, in a system. So using of more renewable energy, seeing how you are working on your product. While you work on the product, if possible, shift from product to service based models. Service based models have proven highly beneficial for companies. Uh, the uh, the business model changes in the term that you're not actually focusing on selling a product, but you're focusing on selling a service. But then this service and the AMCs of the service is something that could bring huge potential to the business as well. So this is something that students should keep in mind, or entrepreneurs should keep in mind while they start developing. Then the other thing that I keep saying is designing for the inner loops. We must, while we are thinking of this, we must uh, think of the models which are closer in the narrower and the closer loops, so that we bring back our product into circulation easily. And now, when I say that, I like to quote myself with an example. Let's say we are talking about a phone and we are talking about Samsung. If today Samsung actually sells mobile phone as a device, as a single device with no modularity. I think I'm going to cover about modularity though in the next slide as well. Uh, but the idea is that if your phone uh, stops working, uh, the design should be such that the first focus of the entrepreneur should be more on repairing that mobile, and recycling should come at the end of it. So if we are focusing on repairing the mobile, we should also think of giving good service to the mobile phone users so that they can come back for the repairs of the phone. And that is very, very important aspect when it comes to circularity. That would improve your customer retention. That would also improve the satisfaction of the customers. Yeah, so here service model we are talking about, like I mentioned before, we should be looking at service-based models. The rental models, subscription models, and sharing models have proven to be very good models. Now, what they do is, the service model, one very important and an example which has been quoted in several journals is the example of light. There was a hotel in London which wanted to kind of renovate their lights, because their light, they realized that their bill on electricity is very, very high. This was because their lights would remain on most of the day by 24, I think 24/7. And that is when they realized that they need to drastically decrease their bill, electricity bill. So they started working with uh, the light provider, which was Philips. And they talked to them, they asked them to develop a system where their consumption of light is decreased, and also the repairability cost of their light fixtures is also reduced. Now, while they sat and did this observation, Philips came up with a very good idea, and Philips uh, uh, decided to work with them on a service-based model. Now, the change was that Philips will no longer sell them uh, the fixtures, the light fixtures, but what they will do is they will sell the light as a service and will charge them per lux. So now what happened was the fixtures made by Philips were of very good quality, which would last long. And if anything happened to the fixtures, they would replace it, change it. And also the system, they came up with sensory lights, so that whenever the area is not used, the lights would go off automatically. So all these little changes to their model reduce the bill of the hotel of electricity almost, I think, by 1/4. And Philips transformed itself from a product-based industry to a service-based model. So these kind of things could actually be really wonderful if we work with them on long term. Designing product that last is another very, very important thing. We know that products actually today the quality of products is reduced, and most of the time it is a kind of a planned thing. Apple is a very good example where it is not actually the durability of the product as much as the obsolescence that was built in by Apple by reducing the phones. And there is a huge backlash that Apple got from the industry, specifically in Europe, where it was asked to kind of work on models which would not become obsolete, which would not make the user change their phones every year. And similar kind of practices now being discussed world over globally about making the products more durable so that they could last longer, not reducing the lifespan, but expanding the lifespan is something that we are looking at. Again, a personal example to quote here with, I remember the first mixer grinder that I bought lasted almost 15 years. I think even 17 years that I bought. And then I had to change my mixer grinder when I went. I bought another one, but the same company I bought it for. And this mixer grinder actually showed problem within the very first year. So I called the customer care, and the guy came and he visited me and looked at it and he said, "Ma'am, आपको एक साल हो गया ये इतना ही चलता है." And I said, "What do you mean by इतना ही चलता? This is an expensive model, and we have been using your grinder for a very long time, and you are telling me that it works only for a year. The other one lasted 17 years." एंड देन ही टोल्ड मी, मैम नहीं अभी इतना ही होता है, अभी आजकल तो एक एक दो दो साल चलता है, हार्डली अगर 5 साल भी आपका ये निकाल देते तो आप सोचो कि बहुत हो गया. दिस इज द एग्जैक्ट words that he said to me, and I can never forget how the same company which I was using had made the product which lasted 15 17 years, and today the product, same company is making products which will not last even 5 years. So that is what we mean by modular, by the designing of products being more durable that lasts longer. Then we come to the material choices. Again, the material that we are using, not all materials are fit for circular economy. Some contains chemicals that are hazardous or to the human, either to the human or to the environment. Additives are often used which are unintentional, but they are basically used for improving the performance, such as improving flexibility or durability when it comes to the plastic. And they are ways to design them out, and they make disposal and recycling of these products even more difficult. By choosing material which are safe and circular, one can build better offering for the users while ensuring that the products and services created fit within a circular economy. So we need to be very, very careful. Monomaterials is another thing that we are talking today, specifically in two sectors, in the plastic and packaging sector and the fashion sector. So when it comes to textiles, when it comes to plastic, these are two debates that are again a wider debates that we are talking about. More the blending either for the raw material or resins or any other kind of material that we are using, more the material, the more the complexity. So we need to reduce this complexity and make more kind of pure material to make the products. Then obviously reducing the resource requirement. The strategy is about finding solutions to deliver utility using the minimum amount of material possible. Now, how can we reduce the material while we are talking about delivering the similar or even better solutions? This could mean finding ways to visualize your offering, creating a digital rather than the physical product. It could also mean designing your product or service in such a way that it requires only a minimum amount of physical material to create. And these are some very important opportunities that we see. How can we deliver the similar kind of delight to the customer while we reduce the requirement? The resource requirement is an important kind of area. Design for modularity. Now, this is where I was coming up with the example of a mobile phone again, is where a mobile phone being sold as a single entity should be sold as different entities, different parts, different modules. Now, looking at a mobile phone, screen and battery are two major components, which one go off very quickly within a year's time, and are also one of the most expensive component of the phone. Now, while we say that if we were able to build up modularity in the phones where we could disassemble and replace battery or the screens without changing the other components, then we could reuse the phone for a longer period. So this is something that needs to be taken care of, and every single product, mobile phone was just an example, uh, should look at developing modular business, modular products which could be then changed and reused for a longer period. Then the supply chain transformation is something where I see a lot of entrepreneurs working. A lot of students also whom we are working with have shown a lot of interest in working on disruptive supply chains that could actually be improved, work with a very simple infrastructure to begin with, but then leads to proper recycling or proper reusage of the product. But at the first and the foremost thing that comes is segregation. We need to work on the source segregation, and then the bulk collection of the plastic waste. And once these two steps are done, I think then a lot of material recovery facilities which are existing or that are coming up could be used to put the waste into more useful methods, more useful ways, and that needs, I think, digital intervention as well. Once all these combinations are used, the supply chains can be totally transformed, and I'm sure that the waste will be managed better by incorporating all these things. I'm now kind of coming up to few final slides of the presentation where I will simply compare the business as usual model to the circular business models. And the study was done by FICCI Accenture in 2018, where they told that the comparison was if we were to build work on our GDP, though this is pre-COVID times, there have been huge changes after the COVID, but the scenario suggests that the GDP at risk of loss, if we were to work on business as usual, that is the linear model, is $697 billion. However, if we were to improve technology and work on the circular business models, the risk of GDP was only at $382 billion. So that means the more circular we think, lesser the lesser risk we are at. Then there is another comparison on cash out costs in potential development paths, again comparing linear to circular economy. This study was done by Ellen MacArthur Foundation on finding out the long-term prosperity of working on circularity in India. And again, the two models compared to 2030 and 50 shows that the three sectors, which is mobility, food, and cities and construction, would actually, the current scenario holds huge cash out costs, whereas the cash out costs in all the three areas decrease if we are thinking of circular scenarios. So that shows the importance the circular economy could bring to cash out in India. Similar study, this is on greenhouse gas emissions, consumption of virgin non-renewable materials, the urban ground land use for commercial and residential buildings, and water usage in construction industry. A similar kind of study that shows that the circular scenarios have a better prospect as compared to the linear scenario. And if India were to think on change the focus from business as usual to circular aspect, then there are more prospects of improving, and the shift will have its own potentials. That is exactly what they want to show. You can read that report. There are all these reports, including our annual report. As I said in the beginning, we have just finished our 1 year, and the annual report can be downloaded from our website. It's available. This is the link to my book. When I started writing, well, very interesting thing is when I started writing the book, I never thought it was the first book, but when my publisher started working on it, he told me that it is actually the first book in India. I'm very glad, because if I had known, I would be more conscious and more nervous, because this is my first book and I was very scared when it came out. Another point I think I would like to highlight here, related to the title of my book, re-emerging. If you see, I'm saying re-emerging movement. There was a huge controversy in Europe when I started talking about re-emerging moment. And the idea was that circular economy is not a new concept in India, but there is, and there were circular practices that we were using all through in our previous generations. We just have to bring them back. We have to think about those kind of practices that were there. And even if we today go to the rural area, we will see a lot of circular practices already. And that's why I said re-emerging movement. So one is that controversy, but then again, I think I am of a typical thought process that India has a lot to bring to table when it comes to circularity globally. ICCE is working towards educating students and also the school, colleges, and the faculty members on this subject. And towards this approach, we have launched 4 courses. These courses are again available on our website. Anyone who wants to take them, these are self-paced courses they can take, and you can look at our editorial board. We have a very rich editorial board who have actually made these courses. We are planning to launch 6 more courses in the coming year, and one of them is definitely plastics. So every single person who is here, if they are interested, they are most welcome to attend these courses. Thank you with that, and I'm open to questions, your suggestions, your viewpoints now.
So much, ma'am. I think if any participant has any question directly to ma'am, kindly put it in the chat box. Okay, I would like to ask a few questions. What my understanding of the subject has been very limited, so they may sound very vague, but what I see is that given the scenario of linear economy, we probably at the beginning of the system of the manufacturing system, or even in service sector, we never realized that it's going to trouble us so much. So now, since we have understood that the linear economy model is hurting us a lot, our environment, and we are into circular economy, what is your guess that when this proportion will be like 75% of circular economy to 25% of linear still lingering on? So when there will be an appreciable change?
Well, Dr. Irfan, that's a very kind of shooting in the dark. You're asking me that kind of question. So, okay, so I'll say, Dr. Irfan, there are a lot of steps people have started taking towards sustainability. And once we start understanding sustainability, I think we start understanding how should we work. I think circular economy being a subject which not many people would know, I think coming directly to circular economy is something that will still take a lot of time, because not many people understand it. Even I would not only talk about individual, but when I was sitting on this committee and we were discussing about this circular economy policy, I remember how much difficulty I had to bring the other people on board in telling that what you are making is more of a recycling policy and not a policy on circularity. Because if it is on circularity, the first objective should be to reduce the consumption. The second should be to include the reusage more than any other thing. But what they are focusing on is simply the recycling. So if that is the kind of problem we are facing with our policymakers currently, then imagine the kind of time we will take to kind of trickle it down and have a massive impact that you're asking for. But I think another momentum that is building in India is the bottom-up approach. A lot of people are working on sustainability, and I'm reading here, someone is writing that we're working on zero waste campus in their campus. So these are little things that are very important. People are now knowing that plastic has to be kind of used lesser and lesser. Many homes, if I talk to my friends and my relatives, I see a lot of them are now switching from use of plastic to other sustainable uses. The way there is a momentum that has built up, I think both the approaches, the top-down approach in the form of legislation and policy making, and the bottom-up approach of the consumer, what the consumer wants, will shape a kind of a more sustainable and circular future for the country. It is already happening. If you really see, I see a lot of people not carrying plastic bags and carrying maybe paper bags or cloth bags today. So these are little things that have changed, and gradually, definitely, when we start phasing out single-use plastic, that is again going to have a very massive impact, provided the legislation is put into practice properly and executed properly. We will be able to achieve a massive difference that way. So yes, the momentum is building, and you and I play a very important role there. We should keep conducting such kind of programs and awareness sessions, which would help to kind of fasten the entire process.
Yeah, indeed, the mere purpose of organizing this faculty development program on a countrywide scale is because it's our core responsibility to make people aware. And when I talk people, the audience here is the generation that will create future generations, that will create the perspective in future generations, because they are the guides. So this was the only purpose why I brought in so many experts on the subject, because the perspective should be strong enough so that they can propagate the same to the students. And it was a sort of wild guess sort of question which I asked, but it was purposeful. Actually, I appreciate and we value and salute the determination of people like you who have put this perspective on a grounding, and they are actually building up on it. That is very important, because to bring in a change in a social setup that we live in, it is a horrendous task, and people like you are seriously working on it, putting it into a perspective, helping people realize the things, and legislation. That's the ultimate roadblock that happens here. And to
Yeah.
convince the people that the legislation should be put to purpose and all these guidelines, I think since today we are discussing it on a platform like this, in itself is a big success.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll see it happen, and we are all working on it, and we are conducting regular FDPs, and I'll be happy if you can spare some time whenever the next FDP happens, because uh, bringing it from the best to the people makes our job very easy, because we will have good people around, and they'll have a good thought around. So is the backbone of circular economy is green technology? Somebody asks.
Yeah, so yes, I think you're right when you say that the green technology is the backbone, but that's not the mere of backbone. There are many other aspects that come to play when we talk about the circular economy. The focus should be on reducing, as I said, reducing the virgin material usage, uh, thinking of ways in which the existing materials are put to secondary usage, building in business models that are thinking of uh, more of kind of resale reuse models. And the good point here is that when I speak to entrepreneurs, when I speak to the startups, one good thing that knowingly or unknowingly has happened is a lot of them are now looking at these models which existed. I can tell you one project that we work with has have had wonderful impact. We were actually working on a kind of a model which is called in the US and the Canada as something as a garage sale. Uh, so which is like we all have multiple objects in our houses that we don't use, but then what to do with them? Most of the time they lie, or maybe some products that we use hardly twice in a year. So why not kind of share that with other people, so that that same product is utilized not by just one family, but maybe in neighborhood by several families put together, and no, not many people would have to invest into it. So these kind of models are coming up, and I'm so glad to see that the younger generation is working on it. So, sir, when you say that green technology, yes, it is. It will limit, it will reduce the kind of pollution that is being generated. It will reduce and change the share, focus on the renewable energy more. But at the same time, I believe it is one aspect, but there are many more aspects that needs to be taken care of when we talk about circularity.
And I will humbly like to add that it should be green for purpose and not green for name.
That's true. That's
It
true.
is a big challenge in our country because there are a lot of people, a lot of models which seemingly are green, but actually they're not so green.
Dr. Irfan here, I would like to add something. I'm not a very big fan, but I would say since I read a lot of models and I do a lot of audits, sit on the auditing panel of a lot of other countries as well, especially EU. And I see when we say that in our country, it's not true in our country, it's actually true everywhere. So you will know, and you must have read about the concept of greenwashing. And we see a lot of companies fail when we do the audits, even in EU. And so this greenwashing is not something that is, we would say, something very specific to India, but every single country, company started to kind of change their ways, but a lot of it started to happen on paper rather than the exactly coming into the process. But while we are talking about circularity, while we are talking about how to build in circularity, the momentum on greenwashing is already building. So sooner than we realize, we will see that already there is talk on this, and India would start even before we think of developing business models, something on greenwashing. And I'm sure even ICCE would come up with a lot of things on that. So these kind of changes will be far and few, I think, to begin with in India comparatively.
Yeah,
Sorry for a different take, but that's my take, Dr. Maybe I'm too optimistic.
In fact, the mere purpose of being here and talking is that we should have open forum for discussions. Why I am concerned about my country is because there is a very famous this couplet from a very famous Persian poet, Sheikh Sadi. He says that Ajabi neist ke bimare ke ejaz masiha dari. In short, he says that I don't doubt the credibility of a doctor, but what I am more concerned is that my patient is too sick for me to wait for the miracles of the doctor to happen. So that is the concern with which I refer to as our country, because what we see around perturbs us, it pinches us a lot.
Totally agree on that, yes.
Dr. Sonika is asking, can you please elaborate on what is greenwashing?
Yes, so Dr. Sonika, this is another aspect that everyone is, it's a major debate in at the global level. Greenwashing basically means when a company tries to show that they are actually switching from the wasteful methods to a more circular model, and they tries to show themselves as more greener organization. I think the best meme that I came across was that plastic bottle which had some cardboard on the outer side, and the company was selling it, saying that we have switched from plastic bottles to the cardboard based bottles. And but when that was elaborated and there was a study done and the bottle was cut into two halves, then there was plastic inside and cardboard outside. So, you know, this is what is called greenwashing, where we are trying to kind of hide the environmental impact that we are creating by showing that our company is taking green measures, is what is greenwashing. And a lot of companies I see are trying to kind of showcase them, because what has happened is, and there is a reason why greenwashing is happening. We should understand that today the consumer has been so widely educated about the wastage, or maybe the plastic particularly. I mean, plastic had the best it could get. It was really the worst hit sector when it came, and the education to the people is so wide that they wanted immediate solution to the problem. While the industry was still struggling to kind of finding innovative methods to switch, but they had no option to come up with some kind of strategies or some kind of solutions that they could show that these are the actual, we are turning green, we are going green. And that somewhere in that race, they started to find shortcuts, and that is what is called greenwashing. So shortcuts are not going to work. We have to find long-term solution, is what I keep teaching my students always.
Before we can, and I'll just add here that some 8 or 10 years back, Supreme Court put a ban on the gutka pouches. Yeah, the pan masala pouches.
Yeah.
They put a ban that they should not use these plastic pouches because they are doing a lot of pollution. Although I was more concerned about the contents of the pouch rather than the packaging of the pouch. But still they did it, and they said that there has to be some sustainable model. And you won't believe, ma'am, they had in their in the judgment of the Honorable Court, it has been mentioned that CPET will be a body who will ascertain that it's not plastics. Although we stand for plastics, but we had to go against our existence and ascertain that there is no plastic. And you won't believe it that people used to come up with 1 meter or 1 meter by 1 meter area of the packaging material that was made up of paper with, but still they were using a small lining material of plastic because they have to reduce the porosity. Simple. And they will ask us, and we were sure enough that they will not pack the contents in this material, that's for sure. But they used
this is because that was the need of the industry. You cannot actually change that. If you ask someone to put the chips in a non-plastic or not in a multi-layered plastic, then it will be full of us to kind of even imagining that. So unless we have a solution, either give a kind of a time. It is something like, I would say, executing without any planning. So if you remember, in 2019, we came up with banning of single-use plastic, when they said 2nd October and we are going to ban the single-use plastic, and how the entire industry went back and saying, if there is no solution, we don't even know what is single-use plastic. And I remember how at that time we were working on the ground, and how every single person we met said, हमें तो ये नहीं पता कि ये single-use plastic होता है. मैडम अगर ये यूज नहीं करेंगे तो इसकी जगह क्या यूज करेंगे? What is the alternate that we have? So coming up with those kind of immediate measures without giving time for industry to develop an alternative is a wrong kind of execution, and that is actually a recipe for disaster already. So we need to think about the industry. We don't want to crush the industry. We want the industry to evolve, and that is when we should give them enough support, enough training, enough hand holding. And while we are making the legislation, we are changing or making an amendment, we should definitely take all these considerations with the industry and then sit and come with some kind of practical implications and practical execution as well. And that is how only, I think that is very, very important. It has started to happen, and I'm glad a lot of times in a few policy meetings where I was, industry was involved, but I still think there are ways, Dr. Irfan, where it could be improved. More of industry could be included, and more researches in India that are happening are taken note of. So another thing that I'm very passionate about is the research work that's happening in India. And if that research work should not be limited to paper, is one concern that the council has. And council wants that every single research, or maybe all the good research that is happening in this domain is also put to use, practical use in through the startups and entrepreneurs that we have. We have a very good system of AICs now, where there are in-house startups which could be actually nurtured to make such kind of business models out of these researches is possible. So I think every single person who's here today, every single faculty member uh, plays a very, very important role in bringing that to the forefront.
Thank you so much. We are indeed honored by the wise words you have been discussing since last 1.5 hour. On behalf of the organizing committee, on behalf of the institution, and on my personal behalf, I'm glad and thankful to you, ma'am, for sparing your valuable time.
Thank you very much.
And we'll look forward for having you again, listening to your wise words and advice. Thank you so much for making such an impact and for being a change maker, a change bringer. All the best to the council, and we'll strive and work hard to make this concept a success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Irfan, and thank you everyone for listening so patiently. Thank you very much.